week's episode from My Hero Academia, we have possibly what is the best episode of the season, I want to say. I don't know what they could potentially do for the rest of the season that could potentially top this, but this is probably most likely going to be considered the best episode of the season, and it follows around the character who's potentially my absolute favorite character in this entire series. Not Dabi. I think Dabi is a great character, and he gets a lot of the limelight in this episode. A lot of that he honestly kind of deserves, and he does this big reveal in this episode, which in hindsight, if you really think about it for like 2 minutes, you'll realize that it's pretty obvious. But although I understand why people like Dabi a lot, I can't really get over the fact that he's basically just an admitted serial killer, and he has admitted in this episode he's killed like more than like 30 people, 30 innocent people. So, that kind of like turns me away. I can appreciate a villain and I can really like them, but I can't really like consider them to be like my favorite character or something, unless they're like exceptionally well written, even if they've considered like numerous atrocities. And it's kind of like, if you really think about it too, the character that I'm talking about is Endeavor, by the way. Endeavor has committed his own manner of atrocities, and at one point he could be considered a villain, not really towards specifically like the general public of the world, but he was a hero who wasn't really a guy who was acting like a hero. He acted very selfishly, and he was very self-centered. And I've mentioned this time and time before, but Endeavor is a character that has gone through numerous character growth and change and development that it has led him to becoming, in my personal opinion, the best characters in this entire series. And he's a character that gets a lot of hate, and he's also a character that I also feel is very misunderstood, because I've had a couple of conversations with people who really like Dabi, despite the fact that he's a serial killer, but they hate Endeavor, right? And a lot of what I hear is because a lot of those people have very similar things that happen to them, like in the style with Dabi, who was previously Toya. So Dabi's reveal in the episode is that he is the son that he thought had died, Toya Todoroki, and that he's Endeavor's son. They had very similar childhoods growing up, like with Toya had with Endeavor, where they weren't really treated the best. They were abused in some sort of way. But then we see in the episode that Toya wasn't ever really abused. At one point, Endeavor actually thought that Toya, just by himself, without ever needing the frost quirk that his wife had, it wasn't even needed, right? He thought that just because Toya had enough firepower to be able to either rival or even outmatch Endeavor's, he thought that would be more than enough. And they had more children, but he was perfectly fine with them not having the half and half quirk like he was trying to create. He was perfectly content with just having children, even if they didn't have that quirk that he was looking for. And then one day his son died, and then after his son died, his drive for having a son or a daughter or just a child in general that had that powerful quirk to be able to surpass All Might grew even stronger, and he became a lot more selfish and self-centered, and he became a lot more abusive, and he wasn't being the best husband or father or anything. And Dabi's whole point in the episode is to not only make Endeavor, who's currently the #1 hero, look as bad as possible by not only revealing that he has a son who he thought died, is actually alive, but they also committed mass murders of over 30 people, is a part of the League of Villains, is currently participating in the destruction of multiple cities and the deaths of hundreds of people, but is also trying to show the bad side of hero work, because then he shows off that Hawks, he introduces a lot of Hawks' backstory, a little bit, not a whole lot, because I guess that's going to be explored elsewhere, but he explains that even Hawks killed a villain who was running away in fear from the heroes. But as we know, Hawks didn't do that in a malicious way, and that was a last resort that he wanted to do. He's taken that out of context, because Twice was going to do something very dangerous and could have potentially caused more harm than anything else. So he had to reluctantly take twice his life, but he's taken it out of context. It's to make the Hero Society look as bad as possible. But then he also reveals that Hawks himself even had a father who was a villain who committed crimes and did all this terrible shit. And Endeavor ended up catching him. The whole point is just to make Endeavor and the Hero Society look as bad as possible. And Dabi is, reasonably upset, but Endeavor the whole time, he doesn't know what to say. He's breathing heavily, he's shaking, he doesn't know what to think. All he is trying to think throughout his head is, how the fuck is my eldest son alive when all that we found of him was this fucking jawbone? They literally found nothing of him. Even his skeleton was gone, and he thought that his oldest son was long dead, and there was no way that he could potentially be alive. This episode really just kind of further cemented that Endeavor and the entire Todoroki family actually has some of the best characters in this entire franchise, and it almost makes you wonder why Deku is even the main character, because he's not even getting a lot of the limelight anymore. He doesn't really grow or change that much, but that kind of ends up leading him to being like a whole bunch of other characters that we've seen from other shonen anime, like Luffy from One Piece. But even Luffy, grows and develops and becomes a lot more mature. Deku is kind of pretty much the same. That's besides the point. They just do a lot with this episode, with the relationship between Dabi and Endeavor. And man, it was just really, really interesting to see, and I feel like this has been kind of missing for a little bit. Something, like a huge reveal like this. I don't really know how to explain it. I just really, really like this episode. The whole shape of the Hero Society is going to forever change because of this reveal. And who knows what's going to happen after the fact, right? Is Endeavor going to have to do some press talks and explain himself and like what he did and why he did what he did, or are people even going to be able to conceive him as being an actual hero after the fact? Is he going to have to step down from being the number one and someone else has to take that role? Who knows? I have no idea what's going to happen after this point. And what Dabi is going to do after this as well, I have no idea. One moment that I actually thought was really cool from Dabi was he combined the Flash, Fire, Fist, and Prominence Burn together. That I thought that was actually really cool. I wanted to see that. But Best Jeanist actually ends up showing back in the episode, and he actually tries to say that Hawks actually ended up killing Best Jeanist to prove that he was a part of the League of Villains / Paranormal Liberation Front, all that, But no, Best Jeanist is actually alive. So, the whole time Hawks was trying to outplay, the League of Villains and Dabi himself and all that. And that's where the episode actually ends. Best Jeanist just kind of shows up out of nowhere and uses his quirk to constrain everyone and try to get them all from trying to escape. And that's where it ends. And I have no idea what's going to happen next. I say this every week, but man, I just never know what to expect next. A character is dead, or something happens with like one for all and all for one and all that. This was just a really good episode, and I really enjoyed it. I believe this is probably going to be the best episode of the season, and if it's not, I'll be actually genuinely surprised. But that's besides the point. That's all I really have to say about the episode. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap things up. I really enjoyed it. I think people should appreciate Endeavor a lot more than what he has, because I think people seriously just misunderstand him, and I think people need to learn to let their grievances aside and their own personal experiences aside and see the character for what he is and for what he's worth. And I think if they do that, they'll find that he's actually a terrific character that needs a lot more appreciation. So with that being said, if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic day. I'm out. Peace.